Are we sure this shadow isn't just a figment of his imagination? I'm Kim, and this is Hung Channel.
In modern-day Japan, there's an urban legend about a strange phenomenon that many people have experienced: the feeling of being followed by a shadow. This is not just a personal experience, but a collective psychological fear shared by many at certain times and places. This story follows a typical office worker's perspective, gradually evolving into a spine-chilling and unexpected conclusion, and attempts to explore the nature of the shadow person in Japanese folklore. Chapter 1: The Beginning of Shadows. Tanaka Yukio is an ordinary office worker who lives a mundane life. He resides in a quiet residential area in Tokyo, commuting to work every day. After returning home each evening, he faces the monotony of his night. One night, after working late at the office, Tanaka feels something unusual. As he walks down his usual street, he looks back and notices a vague figure shadowing him from behind in the darkness. At first, he doesn't think much of it. Tokyo is such a bustling city that people often walk behind each other. However, as he continues walking, the figure seems to quicken its pace, keeping the same distance no matter how Tanaka changes his speed or direction. Feeling uneasy, Tanaka accelerates his pace, his heartbeat racing. Finally, at a street corner, he stops and looks back, only to find the figure has disappeared without a trace. That night, Tanaka believes he was simply overworked and tries not to worry. However, the unease lingers. As he stands by his window, staring at the streetlights, he feels the unsettling sensation that someone is watching him from the shadows. Chapter 2: No Escape. In the following days, the feeling of being followed doesn't subside. Tanaka consciously alters his route home, even changing his work schedule to avoid encountering the shadow. Yet, no matter what he does, whenever he looks back, the figure remains, like a restless spirit, following at the same distance. What began as a visual annoyance slowly turns into an invisible mental burden, and one night, Tanaka completely breaks down. Once again, walking home, Tanaka chooses to stop, turn around, and stare directly at the figure behind him. As his eyes adjust to the darkness, he finally sees clearly a woman's figure in a white kimono with long black hair. Her face, contorted and filled with unease and pain, is faintly visible. His heart pounds wildly and his whole body starts to tremble. He wants to scream, but no sound comes out. The woman remains motionless, silently standing in the darkness. Chapter 3: The Pastor's Secret. Tanaka feels that his peace has been thoroughly invaded by this shadow. Every night when he returns home, he is haunted by the vision of the woman. He begins to reflect on his past, trying to figure out what might be causing this. Then, he recalls that 2 months ago, while visiting his hometown, he had explored an abandoned shrine on a whim. It was old and in disrepair, surrounded by overgrown grass, with an atmosphere that felt as though it held untold stories. When he entered the shrine, he had an odd feeling, like someone was watching him from the darkness. Though he didn't give it much thought at the time. Now, Tanaka wonders if it was in that very place that he brought back the shadow. He remembers staying there for quite a long time, and even felt an unusual curiosity toward a specific object. Eventually, he couldn't resist bringing it home. A small box, seemingly ordinary, carved with a few flowers. Could this object have become the vessel for the ghost, bringing its spirit into his life? Chapter 4 Moving and Returning. After enduring the mental torment of being followed every night, Tanaka decides to leave Tokyo and move to a remote town, hoping that this change would help him escape the shadow. At first, he feels a brief sense of relief, and the shadow seems to vanish. However, one night while walking down a street in a small town, the familiar feeling of unease strikes again. The woman's figure reappears in the shadows, following him once more. No matter where he goes, the shadow follows, coldly observing from a distance. Tanaka decides to return the object, and even arranges for a monk to perform a ritual at the abandoned shrine. When he finally places the small box back where he found it, he immediately feels a sense of relief. As he turns to look at the dark corner of the shrine, he sees the woman's shadow slowly dissolve into the air. Tanaka is left uncertain, but he swears he hears a soft voice whisper, "Arigato." Chapter 5 The Truth of the Ghost. In Japanese folklore, it is believed that spirits can attach themselves to certain objects. This is not a random occurrence, but a deep emotional connection between the object and the spirit. When these objects are unknowingly taken away, the spirit follows, accompanying the object to a new place. The monk who performed the ritual explains that the small box once belonged to a woman. Many years ago, before the shrine fell into disrepair, the monk worked there. A young woman used to visit the shrine every day, praying for the safety of her husband, who was fighting in a war. However, when she finally learned that her husband had died, her world shattered. Unable to bear the grief, she chose to end her life at the shrine, her soul unable to rest, wandering there, waiting for an unfulfilled wish. The small box had been the only connection she had with her husband. When Tanaka unknowingly took it home, her tragic and unresolved story attached itself to the box and followed him. This was not just a ghostly event, it was a manifestation of emotional attachment. The object became the medium through which the spirit continued its sorrow, subtly influenced Tanaka, who became the unwitting bearer of the woman's soul. Chapter 6 The Eternal Shadow. The shadow that followed Tanaka was not merely a ghost. It also represented his own inner fear and unresolved emotional baggage. No matter how Tanaka tried to escape, he could never shake it off. In truth, these so-called accident objects sometimes become the vessel for a spirit's lingering pain, attaching itself to the object and following it as it moves to a new home. These spirits are not always malevolent, nor do they necessarily seek to harm others. According to Japanese folklore, when a tragedy is bound to an object, the spirit cannot find peace. It follows the object, seeking a new owner to convey its story. These spirits are not always driven by hatred, but are often searching for closure. They do not necessarily want to harm anyone, but simply seek to share their story and be heard. For the person being followed, the shadow represents not vengeance or interference, but the soul's quest for release. Unless, of course, one encounters a malevolent spirit, then the story may take a different turn.
I'm Kim. Please subscribe, like, and share. And stay with me. You will never face the dark unknown.